Support for Flying Valiant Builds is brought to you by 1st and 64th Customs on YouTube, Video Geek Productions, the Brian Smith YouTube channel, Jonathan Vonesh, Wade Hendryx, Larry Presnell, and from support from viewers like you. Please like, share, and subscribe. Well, we're doing an art for art trade today. Got a friend named Robin. He likes Novas. He's feeling a little blue. There we go. Hey there, folks. Chuck here. And this is a special build today. I am working on this project for a gentleman named Robin, and he runs a YouTube channel called Ripwreck Raceway. I found Robin through YouTube. He emailed me, and there's a whole story behind that, and I'll link to it in the video that's in the top right corner or in the description below. But long story short, we got to talking, and Robin is a really talented folk artist as well as an electronic music creator. And in fact, the music you're hearing right now is some of his work. And I will link to his SoundCloud so you can check that out if you're into that type of music. And his channel as well, like I said, will be in the description. So please check that out. It's not the most polished channel. I think he would agree to that. But the thing I love about Robin is he does not let any setbacks keep him from creating. He has faced a lot more than many people have to face, and he's still out there and he's still creating and putting himself out there. And I think that's incredible and inspiring for anyone. So when I found out about what he did and that he was going to make a car for me, I insisted that I would at least return the favor. So I talked to him about what he would like me to build for him. And with that in mind, let's get to the breakdown. So Robin loves Chevy Novas. Originally he said any Chevy Nova, and after talking to him a little bit, he wanted an early Chevy Nova. So we got this 67. He wanted it to be rusty, but race ready, kind of like some of my other commissions in the past. And he also wanted it to be light blue and dark blue in a fade, and I've never done a fade, so that was a fun challenge to take on. Also, he wanted his DJ logo on the hood and my logo on the trunk. Ready? Punch that subscribe button. Let's boogie. This was my first time doing a Racing Champions build, and I gotta say, I loved how many pieces were in this build. It made it real easy to separate and focus on the individual pieces. And while it did have its own steering wheel that came with it, I still like my 3D printed ones better. So I did add that to the interior, which I loved that it had a separate dash. I didn't go too crazy on the body. I wanted a few dents and dings to make it irregular. I did burr off a bit of the trim on the back quarter panel. Missing trim is a quintessential part of a rat rod or a beater. It's pretty easy to do with a burr tool and then finish up with a sanding flap wheel. This is an 80 grit. And then file everything smooth on the hard edge, because you really can't get a clean line with the flap wheel. At least I don't trust myself to. Then I used my automatic punch to make some divots where the trim holes would be, and it was off to primer and paint. And Robin had said he wanted a light blue to dark blue fade, and originally in my head I thought, oh, light blue on top, dark blue on the bottom. And then after I got that done, realized he had said dark blue on top, light blue on the bottom. So I did it again. I grabbed his logo off his site and added it to the hood. And I already had a version of my logo printed. This is one from before I had white toner, so it's a little more subdued, which I actually thought worked well for this build. I stripped off the chrome and painted the grille with an aluminum paint and used the Stuart Simple mirror paint for the chrome areas. A little wood grain for the steering wheel. This time on the chassis, I airbrushed on burnt umber over the primer gray to get a more mottled appearance, and I used a warm gray on the exhaust and drive line. I think it did a good job of incorporating the dusty, crusty look that you get with old exhaust pipes and accumulated dust on greasy parts. I also used some wraith's bone to accentuate the high areas on the exhaust. Then it came time to break out a set that I've been very eager to get into, the AK Interactive Crusted Rust Deposits, light, medium, and dark. I started with the dark and worked in the shadow areas. It's an interesting texture. It's surprisingly more of a wash than I thought it would be. It was a little different than what I was expecting, but I was still quite pleased with the results as I worked my way through the different colorations, and you can see that in the final output. It does dry very, very flat, and that I think is where the texture kind of comes in, but putting it on, it feels like you're putting on a wash or a filter. But as it dries, you get that interesting ultra matte texture. I went back to the mirror paint to do some accents on the interior, including the seat accents and the trim. I also gave the chassis and the interior a subtle dirt wash, and hit the engine with a bit of engine oil for obvious reasons. Once everything was sealed up on the car, I gave it a wash of Nuln oil to bring out all the nooks and crannies that would be filled with lighter paint and make the pieces feel like they're separate parts of the chassis, and then a Nuln oil wash on the interior as well, followed by another round of subtle dirt over the entire car. Then it was time to do some chipping and streaking effects. I started with the German black brown from Vallejo, which when I'm not using my colored pencil method is my favorite way of adding chipped effects. And then I switched to my stippling brush to go over much of the top of the car, and I wanted a top-down style rust on this car. I also went around his decal to make it look like it had kind of chipped around the area and his logo was showing through. And while I had the paintbrush wet with the black brown, I went over the parts of the car that I don't want attention drawn, which gives the car more depth, and it draws the eye away from the parts of the car that aren't as interesting. I did switch to the colored pencils and used a light blue colored pencil in spots to highlight the areas around the chips to make it look like lighter paint. It's my first time working with color on color pencils, and I think it worked out really well. Then I went to my dark rust colored pencil and stippled that over the German black brown. A few more grime effects for the engine. At this point, I wanted to basically save my work, so I coated the body in ultramatte clear as a way to protect my progress so far, and then went to work with some more stippling, this time with medium rust and light rust. Hey, if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. All the cool kids are doing it, and you want to be cool, right? And since I was trying new things, I also broke out this MIG Productions Extreme Rust Wash. I was curious to see what was so extreme about it. And yeah, it was pretty extreme. In fact, it was a little too extreme, so I didn't use much of it. I also had this brown wash, and I went over a few of the panels of the car. I left off one door, just because there's always one panel on the car that weathers just a bit differently than the others. And once again, to the mirror paint to put in the trim. I'm getting a little more confident in my mirror paint applications, and I'll do the whole car at once now. I used to only do the front and back and then wait and then do the sides, but I've gotten better at handling it. That being said, I still stick my finger in the paint fairly often. What's a technique you've improved recently with some of your builds? Let me know in the comments. Once all the mirror paint had dried, I went over the areas with a toothpick to gently rub off any overpaint, any areas where the paint went where it shouldn't. And this time around, I actually painted the trim on the side. I didn't use bare metal foil on the trim. I actually hand painted it this time, just to see if I could. It wasn't perfect, but for what I was going for, it turned out okay, and it was actually pretty easy to clean it up with a toothpick. A Nuln oil wash for the grill, some lead belcher for the wheels. I used Wraithbone white for the headlights covered with wet effects, and I used my own mixture of an orange acrylic and metal medium from Vallejo to make a more punchy turn signal amber. I'm not sure if I love this versus the actual turn signal amber paint that I usually use, but I was trying something new. I know the regular taillights would have a backup lens on them, but for this build I felt like just doing a solid red taillight. I really liked how that looked. There's the wet effects on the headlights. I used the Vallejo dust wash on the tires, which I really like because it sinks into the crevices and makes it look like caked in dirt. This is more of that extreme rust wash. I decided to do the bumper, the hood, and just a little bit on the front bumper. Now it's time to snap everything back together, which, believe it or not, was quite easy with this car. The fit and finish was excellent. And it was time for the decal and the number. But before this Nova made its journey from North Florida to Nova Scotia, let's take one last look at what we started with. A pristine and clean 1967 Chevy Nova from Racing Champions, and here's where we ended up. A lean, mean street bruiser with slotted mags and character for days. Robin has since received this Nova, and he seems pretty happy with it, but I'd love to know what you think. Let me know in the comments below. As always, this video wouldn't be here without my patrons, who have been an incredible source of support for me. You saw the Bandit level sponsors at the beginning of this video. I'd also like to thank the Rockford level patrons, Mid-Island Customs Diecast, my wife Carolyn, Maple Leaf Matchbox Makeovers, Double B's Customs, Gary Tasker, Diecast Pirate, Aunt Tracy, and Mr. Zanzibar91 on Instagram. I'd also like to thank my Douglas level patrons, the Good Bad Better podcast, Jordan Kleinhenn, Chris Craft's YouTube channel, Jim Silva YouTube channel, and new patron Christian Long. Thanks everybody. Please be sure to check out everybody's YouTube channels and other cool stuff in the description below. If you want to join in on keeping this party rolling, I'd love to have you on board. Visit flyingvaliant.com to learn how you can support this channel and get all sorts of insider information, behind the scenes looks at what I'm building, early access to my builds, and opportunity to win exclusive prizes from me, including some of my custom vehicles. If you'd like to hire me to build a car for you, make some 3D printed parts, or print you some custom decals, I'd love to talk to you. Email flyingvaliant@gmail.com and we'll see if we can get something rolling. And honestly, one of the best things that you can do to help support this channel is to punch that subscribe button, give this video a like, tell your friends if you really want to bother your friends about some guy on YouTube building tiny cars, and leave a comment, even if it's just to say hi. I'd love to hear from you. If all this isn't enough and you still want more, you can always buy Flying Valiant Team merch by visiting our merch store over at JEPEG Design on TeePublic and Redbubble. Those links are in the description below. And they support my brother, who is an amazing freelance graphic artist, so be sure to hire him and pay him lots of money if you need that sort of thing. As always, I want to thank you and Robin and everybody else for coming along with me for the ride. So until next time, stay fresh, cheese bags.